Welcome into Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. We have big news coming today out of Atlanta, Georgia. Jeffery Williams, also known as the rapper Young Thug, is set to be released from jail. I do want to show you a live look now at the city of Atlanta. But again, yeah, big news coming out. We do know that Young Thug will be released from jail nearly 2.5 years after he was arrested on RICO charges. This is going to bring the longest case in Georgia history to an end, with Young Thug accepting a plea deal. The Atlanta Star pleaded guilty to participating in criminal street gang activity, but no contest to the RICO charge. And here to break it all down is legal affairs journalist Meghann Cuniff. Meghann, thank you so much for being with us here to talk about the latest with this Young Thug trial. Again, this has been a very, very long case that we've been anxious to see what the outcome is. We now know that Young Thug is going to be released.
Yes, he did plead guilty to drug and gun charges today, and he pleaded no contest to the two main charges against him, which were leading criminal gang activity and then also racketeering conspiracy, which is basically organized crime. And he was very near a plea deal with prosecutors in which they would have recommended to the judge that he be released from jail onto 15 years probation, which pretty much, especially in this case, has been all but guaranteeing the judge will adopt that. But what was really suspenseful today was that the plea negotiations fell apart. There was a stalemate over the exact conditions of his probation. They didn't end up agreeing on anything. So he ended up entering a non-negotiated plea where he just pleaded guilty to some charges, the drug and gun charges, and then no contest to, like I said, the leading gang activity and the racketeering charge. He did plead guilty to just gang activity, but it's the leading gang activity he didn't want to admit. And then they took a gamble. Prosecutors actually recommended 25 years in prison, but the judge did ask them about, well, what were the plea deal negotiations and what were you willing to give him? And they had been willing to allow him to leave jail that day on probation. So the judge noted that when she imposed her sentence and sentenced him today to probation, to leave jail today, or perhaps later tonight once he goes through the booking process, be on probation for 15 years. But there is a big catch, and it's if he violates his probation, he could go to prison for 20 years. It's going to be backloaded, like it says there. It's kind of a term they use in the Georgia state criminal justice system. And of course, the judge went through a long list of requirements that he has in addition to that. And it's going to be a big question of whether he can comply with the terms of his probation. And the idea that if he doesn't, he's going to get a break. I think the judge made pretty clear that she's really hoping he complies with everything, because he's taking a big risk if he doesn't. So it's going to be a big question of what is his life going to be like now that he's outside, but under all these requirements, including one that really restricts his movements in Atlanta. He can go there for work if a family member has a medical emergency, that kind of thing. But he is really not allowed to go to Atlanta. His lawyer had even suggested that he not go to Cleveland Avenue, which is the impoverished area where this alleged gang, the gang that prosecutors had really built this case around, was based. So really a big day in the case. There are still two other co-defendants left who right now, if they don't end up pleading to anything, will continue trial on Monday. But there are plea negotiations with them that are still ongoing.
And Meghann, I want to ask you again, we just had that tweet up from Complex that talked about one of the biggest questions in this case once Thug is going to become home. People are asking, of course, we know that Gunna, the other artist who was initially included in this investigation, who got out earlier after taking his own plea deal. The question was, were the two of them going to be able to continue to collaborate? I mean, obviously, they're on the same record label. What was the outcome in that sense? Is he going to be able to talk to Gunna and as well, of course, his biological brother, unfiltered, who he also does make music with as well?
There are a lot of requirements here that I'm still going over. This thing just ended a little bit ago, and there's just so much to go over, and I'm writing my own article. So that is something I'm going to be including in my article at legalaffairsandtrials.com that I'm going to be sending out to my Substack mailing list. So there's a lot of details to go over here.
Absolutely. And when you're talking again about this case and some of the things that he said in court, Young Thug did make a statement. I want to pull it up here on our screen so you can see exactly what he did say in court. He says, quote, "I take full responsibility for my charges through these last 2.5 years of my life. You are truly the best thing that's happened to me." So again, it seems like at a time, Young Thug wasn't sure if he was going to be coming home because of just how complicated this case got. In fact, there have been several judges as well who have been seated in this. Is this something that's common to see in such a convoluted case where it's changing almost daily? We were getting updates about new judges, things were happening with key witnesses. When you're talking about YSL Woody, again, just get very, very complicated.
Yeah, Judge Whittaker is the second judge on the case. The judge before that was on the case the entire time, Judge Glanville, and he seemed to have some real trial management problems just in terms of how he was able to wrangle this already way too big case. That was what I already always observed as somebody who's watched a lot of trials with this, that this just seemed like way too big of a case. And prosecutors had a bunch of stuff in there, a bunch of overt acts, a bunch of charges, a bunch of witnesses that they just simply didn't need to prove a case. And I think the plea deals show that it was a little more complicated than they're just completely innocent of all charges and they're falsely accused. Although Brian Steele made it clear that he believes that today. He also admitted that there is a factual basis for some of this stuff. So I think the whole case is an interesting example of Atlanta trying to deal with crime in the community and the politics and how messy county judicial politics can be with the DA's office, because this is really all on the Fulton County District Attorney's office. But when you look at what they were prosecuting, I mean, one of these murders, the murder of Donovan Thomas, happened in 2015. It's been unsolved ever since. There's been people charged. There's been rumors about who did it, but nobody has ever been convicted in that murder. And I think that's a fundamental problem that society, when society formed, the reason we have a criminal justice system is to deal with things like murder, not prosecutorial misconduct. It's like, which came first, you know? And this case just got so engulfed in all of that, people really started to lose track of that. But I think the plea deal today, and especially the fact that Young Thug is going to be on probation for 15 years. And if he doesn't comply with it, he faces some pretty serious consequences here. I think it kind of shows how complicated it is, and the idea that this would ever be declared a mistrial with prejudice and the charges would just go away. I'm not sure that would have happened, but I think Brian Steele, his lawyer, wishes this could have gone to verdict because he thinks that the trial was going well for him and that he could have gotten a not guilty verdict. He made that clear, but he also said that, he's not the one sitting in jail eating processed food out of a bag. It's Young Thug who wanted the chance to get home. And just as somebody who covers a lot of sentencing, I was surprised. I thought it was a big risk for him to do that when prosecutors are recommending 25 years. But the fact that prosecutors were willing to just let him go earlier that day if he had agreed to certain requirements in his probation, I've got to look into what exactly that was, I think shows that the 25 years, like the judge says, didn't really mean much. There was just so much going on in this case.
It certainly was, and it's again captured so many of us for the 2 years that it has been ongoing. So it does seem like it's coming to an end. And Meghann, before I let you go, I just have to ask you a little bit more about these RICO charges. Obviously, these became really popular when you're trying to group a big group of people together. When it dates back to the mob in New York. So to see someone again not beat the charge because he pleaded no contest, but he is going to be able to get out of jail without serving a significant portion of time. Do you think that that's an interesting part of this case, that, again, he will be coming home without serving numerous years, as though many people did predict at one point?
Yes, I think that definitely the ending just keeps with the unusualness of the case and just how interesting it was in terms of a community trying to deal with crime and then the messy politics of a county district attorney's office and how those two kind of overlap.
Certainly is something that we have been keeping up with. Again, Meghann Cuniff, a legal affairs journalist here, helping us break down the latest verdict that we did have in this Young Thug trial. Meghann, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, again, that was just some of the latest information that we had coming out of Atlanta, Georgia, as we now know that the rapper Young Thug, also known as Jeffery Williams, is going to be released from jail. He's been in jail since he was arrested on May 9th, 2022, so about 2.5 years spent behind bars fighting some of these charges. So it is important to know that now Williams will have to avoid the Atlanta area for a decade, but he's required to make anti-violence presentations locally 4 times a year, contributing to his 100 hours of annual community service as well. Young Thug is also not allowed to have any association with the alleged gang that the court is calling. And he cannot use any gang signifiers, but he can travel for work and must undergo random drug testing as well. So we did hear from some of his lawyers outside of the courtroom earlier today. And it was his lawyer, Brian Steele, who continues to say that he believes that he could have beat this trial for Young Thug if he had been willing to continue to stay behind bars until January when the trial was scheduled. Young Thug, though, saying, hey, I want to come home. I don't want to be in jail any longer. If I can take a plea deal to get out, he did decide to go. So, again, that's some of the latest that we have been tracking with that story out of Atlanta. The longest trial in Georgia history coming to an end with the rapper Young Thug now being released after taking a plea deal.